on this? Thanks, mate. It comes in, doesn't it? So we've got a car here, we've got a flip chart here, and we'll start with someone picking a subject, and then I'll start talking about it, and then see where it goes. So over to the floor. What do you want to discuss? Anybody?
Anti-robot settings, please.
You need them.
I've heard this before.
What? Setting them?
Well, I've seen done two ways. And one of the ways I've seen it is picking the wheel up, like I said, the wheel up by your hand. Yeah, that's it. And that one as well.
Yeah. Well, this car's a good example of it being wrong.
Well,
As a quick check, the way I do it, and a lot of people have seen us do it, is to pick a wheel up that side and see the gap you can get underneath, and pick the opposite side up, and it should be the same. And when you do the front, you're inherently just testing the back roll bar, and when you're doing the back, you're doing the front roll on this as well. And there's a difference in the gaps, but that's only a rough check. I wouldn't set the roll bars doing it that way. That's just a check after a run. Say I've been driving around and had a bit of a bounce with another car or a wall or something. You can tell straight away, just doing that, whether it's actually alright or not. To set the roll bars properly, you need your wheels off, really. But I mean, another quick way is to lift the wheel so there's no more movement on that, and see how much, measure how much that lifts, and then do the same this side, and you see this side's already lifting, which tells you it's a mile out.
so you would do that just the way you did it, but the chopper was always connected.
You can do it that way, and if you watch and look at what's happening, you can adjust it from that. You can also hear it on the track, because if you were listening to Mark's car, you'd hear it different on lefts and rights. And you should know that when you're driving, because you should be watching, and the car's talking to you when you're driving. And that information, it's shouting at you, I'm wrong.
Even though you are.
The earplugs make come out when you're driving, take the earplugs out, mate.
Yeah.
So basically what we're saying is that the roll bar's got to be even side to side, to have the right setup. But what happens if what's hard and soft roll bar also hanging in the car? How do you know you need a harder roll bar or a softer roll bar on the front or the back?
That's down to the balance of the car. It depends on how the car feels, and also tyre wear and diff out, because if you put a thicker roll bar or stiffen the roll bar on the back, you'll get more steering because you've got more weight transfer to the front tyres. But the downside is you can end up with more dip out, so whilst you feel faster going into the corner, you'll lose drive coming out because you'll be dipping out coming out of the corners. So you actually can go slower. So it's everything to do with suspension and roll bars and the whole lot. It's all a compromise. You can't say this does exactly that. There's always a trade-off. There's always something that will go worse to make something better. And you've got to get sort of 2 steps forward with only 1 backwards all the time to make the car faster.
Right. Okay. So on the cars that I've seen set up, we always run a soft roll bar on the back and we run a hard roll bar on the front. Is that in general terms how it is, or?
In general, on a 2-wheel drive car, rear-wheel drive, you need to get most of the roll cover on the front, which is, in layman terms, the stiffness. You need to try and get the roll control of the car on the front, because the back end is trying to keep it back in a line going around the corner and also drive the car forward. So these tyres are doing 2 jobs. Those are just pointing it, and on the straight they're doing nothing. So the back is always the softer end.
Yeah, what sequence do you set up a car so you know from obviously roll bars, brake camber, toe, truth? Is there a sequence you set car?
People do it in different sequences, but if the car's all wrong and you want to just start afresh, first thing to do is cambers. Right? I know it sounds a little bit backwards, but if you set the cambers first, then take the wheels off, then you can sit in droops in the spindle. If you do it the other way around, you end up chasing yourself in circles, because when you do the cambers, your droops change because you're lifting the spindles up and down with the camber.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the camber doesn't change when you change the droop, but the droop changes when you change the camber.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, if you do it the other way around, you think you've got it right and your car will be crap out on the track.
Everything on the car is all to do with weight transfer. Only your tyres have only so much grip, and it's how you transfer the weight in a corner that makes the difference on the handling, and also the tyre footprint. If you imagine, if this table was glass and you imagine you were then underneath and you looked at, say that's a tyre, just imagine that's a tyre, and it's the footprint. So if that's dead square, you'd have an oblong footprint of tyre. Yeah. If it's got a camber on it, it's a pear shape.
Can you see what it is yet?
That's how I
It's an upload.
Well, we got a bit of camber on there, was it?
Yeah. Obviously, you have a line from the middle.
If that is
That's the best one.
right, if that's straight, we've got say 2 degrees of camber there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Right? The footprint on that will look like that, right? If you go there underneath on the table, right? So when you go around the corner and the car starts pitching and leaning over, that footprint, so like that you get maximum grip. That's half of setting the suspension up. It gets a little bit more complicated in the front with caster and cambers and bits and pieces. It depends on where you want to go with all that later. But that's critically important. The worst thing you can do, as some people found yesterday, I can't remember what I was talking to, is end up with positive camber in a corner. Right? Because what happens then is you end up with that teardrop, you end up with it the other way around, and you end up with snap over straight away, especially if it's on the bike. Because you'll start pitching into the corner, and your footprint gets less and less and less, and then you end up from the outer edge of the tyre, just here, right? And all of a sudden it'll just go swap onto it straight away. It's a lot of blank faces all of a sudden.
So when setting droop, should you have your shocks on or off? Because people do it different ways.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I do it with them on. Some people go to the trouble of taking all the shock absorbers off and the tyres off and then setting the roll bars, and they're feeling for the play between the two sides. I actually think that's wrong because you're not actually putting the roll bar under load. If you do it this way, that roll bar is under load with this spring as well, isn't it? Yeah. And I think that's more accurate way of doing it. I always do it.
So you leave shocks on throughout your whole setup?
Yeah.
That leads me to a question. When,
You're not allowed.
when you're doing a roll bar, say you've got the shocks off and you're doing a roll bar, and the roll bar feels right, but the one wheel's off the ground because the roll bar's holding the wheel off. But if you have the shocks on, obviously it has to be pushed down. You can see that. Does that actually make a difference in?
Well, your roll bar is wrong then, isn't it? If your roll bar is set sufficiently wrong that it's holding one wheel in the air, when you do it this way, you'd see it turn away.
Yeah.
And your droops would be wrong because it's being held up as well.
So if you do it with the shocks on, it's impossible when you take them off that if you've got it right that way round, that the wheel would be held off by the roll bar.
Yeah, but yeah. You need to do with logical series going and checking things, but yeah. I always leave the springs on though.
Okay. And okay, while we're on droop, how do you know when to alter your droop to more or less droop? I mean, obviously it depends on the track, I assume.
Depends on the track and the driver.
Okay.
And it's all down to weight transfer because, right, say on the back of your car, I don't know how much droop this has got on it. Really. If you wanted more weight transfer, I'm not saying it's wrong, Mike. Not yet. Right. Oh yeah. if you, oh, the balance fell down. Critical.
Anyone got any paid with?
If you wanted more steering going into a corner, you can allow the car to do more weight transfer. Say you're going into a left-hand corner, right? The limiting factor, if you're braking and going in on the entry, is how much weight you're moving to this corner, primarily, right? And if you are limiting the back from coming up, you're stopping the weight transfer, aren't you? So you're making the car more stable, which can be good if you're on a high grip track, but if you're on a low grip with a few bumps, as in this track, you might want more droop to allow more weight transfer. And it will also ride the bumps better then because your suspension can physically go up and down. If you're on a high grip, super smooth track, you can run a lot less droop than you can on a low grip, bumpy track.
But don't the front caster do different to the front as well anyway?
Well, we can go to caster if you want, and Ackermans and Canvas and...
Because I run mine right back and it's taking steering out, but it's better in the corners.
If you run a lot of caster, basically a caster is the position of the top arm relative to the bottom, and the more
Mine's
caster
right
you have,
back.
the more it is leaned back on your kink in inclination. Right? If you run it right back, you tend to find it'll be quite stable going in, and it'll probably hold the line coming out on throttle. That's what caster does. But it's also related to camber, because the more caster you put on, it affects your effective camber in the corner. If you put lock on, if your top arm's a long way back, you're effectively pulling more camber on your front tyre as you go in, so then you can take some camber off. So a lot of people end up going and chasing the backside in circles. They'll put more caster on and think, oh, well, that's not very good. But it's probably the footprint will change because they haven't changed the camber at the same time.
So what's the right way of doing the cameras? Like, some people push the car down.
I always do it push down, absolutely always, and the reason for that is dead simple. If you're playing with suspension and droops and right heights and different things, your car could be sitting there, it could be sitting there, it could be sitting there, and it all changes the camber. The only reference point, the fixed point you've got is on the floor. That's always the same, no matter what you do. Measure it there, it's a constant position, isn't it? That's the simple one, is that. That's why I do it that way.
Or front and back.
Front and back. Any camber change, any camber settings are tested, car on the floor. In my opinion.
Does that apply to towing as well? Second towing as well?
On the front,
And the back?
on the back, unless you've got bump steer, which most cars can't have bar an RS5, and the RS5 you can deliberately put bump steer on it to actually for some performance benefits. I'll get to that later. It shouldn't change with suspension movement because it's fixed on the bottom arm.
I'm thinking of Formula 1 with all the little links.
Well, that's the same as the RS5 on the touring cars. You've got a link at the back and you can adjust the height of that to get the bump steer.
Okay.
And you can use that to steer the car as you're going into corners or generate more grip. Derek will probably be going, right? So you can deliberately put bump steer on those. If you're on a fixed car, just a straight edge across here, but straight edge, measure to the front tyre, that's the easiest way. Some people do a straight edge to the edge of the chassis. Doesn't really matter as long as the fixed point and you do the same every time.
But is that compressed down now?
Fixed arms, it doesn't matter. But if you're on a RS5 or something, it depends on whether you're running bump steer on the back. I noticed on Mark's FG, you have another bump steer on the back and it actually bumping out, which can theoretically help the steering if it's a bit lazy. But it can also help the step back.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
As I was slapping Jarrett for the second time, I know.
Okay, yeah. Is there another question relating to are we on towing or?
What does towing do? What's it do by increasing towing or reducing it? Is it more heat the tyres?
Partly to heat the tyre and also to reduce the scrub radius of the tyre. When you've got a tyre, wheel out of the way. If it's going in a dead straight line, it only needs a certain amount of push to get a bit of sideways movement on it. Whereas if you have a little bit of towing on, it's already got the sideways movement built in, so it resists the slide straight away. It also increases the temperature you can get in the tyres easier. As a rule of thumb, lower grip tracks, more towing, gets more heat in, stops it sliding as much. Higher grip, a bit less towing, you'll carry more speed on the straight. If you need more steering, you can use the back end and loosen it slightly to get it to pivot round slightly, or put bump steer on it if you've got the option like an RS5, which you can't do on most cars.
Question about the tyre temperatures. You know, I know it's about tyre compounds and stuff, but is there an optimum temperature you get to a tyre? Can you take them too hot?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you can get too hot. As a rule, if you actually put a tyre gun against the tyres, which if you're taking things really serious, you should be doing, and just check them as soon as you come into base, and checking where the temperature is on the tyre as well, because it tells you the cameras.
Yeah.
You'll find you can get these into 60, 70 degrees, absolutely no problem. You get to 90, bit marginal. Anything over that, you'll start sliding off straight away.
And is it basically, it's very sticky, but it's just, the tyres just like delaminating sort of thing, just skinning over the top, is that what's happening?
When you get too hot, there's two things that can happen. In Formula 1 they call it grading.
Yeah.
I call it shredding, basically.
Yeah.
What you do, you actually start rolling the surface of the tyre. And the instant you do that, your grip falls off massively, because you've no longer got a nice smooth surface gripping the road.